Hi, everybody. My name is Richard Roberts. I'm the resident dramaturg at the Indiana Repertory Theater. Thank you so much for joining us for today's post show discussion for Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, adapted by Tom Haas, running through December 26th at the Indiana Repertory Theater and also available to stream starting December 10th. Tickets are available at irtlive.com. Wow, that's a mouthful. I'm joined by three of our wonderful actors from the show. Rob Johansen, who plays Scrooge. Jen Johansen, who plays Mrs. Fezziwig and a panoply, what's that word? A lot of other roles. And Nina Jayashankar, who plays, oh my gosh, Belle and Felicity and a bunch of other roles. Welcome, actors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They've all just come home or various places from a student matinee performance. And I want to talk, before we start, I just want to talk a little bit about this new revised script we're doing this year. We've been using Tom Haas's adaptation of Christmas Carol for 30 years now. It's a beautiful adaptation that we really love here at the IRT. Very, very faithful to the original Dickens novel. A couple of years ago, when the pandemic hit, we were hoping to do A Christmas Carol last year, but we knew we wouldn't be able to do it with 16 actors in the rehearsal room like we normally do. We just didn't think that felt safe. So we thought, how few actors can we do A Christmas Carol with? We came up with the magical arbitrary number of 7. And we did, in that process, we decided we were not going to have any children in the production, because at the time when we were having this discussion in 2019, that just didn't feel very safe. We made a lot of changes to the script because of the reduction of the overall cast size and because of the absence of children. And then we ended up not being able to do the show anyway. And we thought, oh, but we love this new script. It's so exciting. We've added a bunch of stuff from the original novel that we were really excited about having. Anyway, 2 years later, now we are doing Christmas Carol. We're doing it both live and streaming, which is exciting. We added a child actor, which our director, James Still, felt was necessary. And of course, once he said it out loud, we were like, duh, of course it is. So now we have a cast of 8. So it's very different, and in many ways, it's very much the same. So the first question I want to ask is to you, Rob and Jen. You've both done Carol dozens of times. How was the process different this year than it's been in the past?
I will acquiesce. I will pass to my better half.
Okay, well, because I've never experienced an adaptation of this script as changed since I started my first production of it. I believe in 2006 was the first time I did the Tom Haas adaptation. So
we should mention that it changes a little bit every year.
Yes,
but it changes a lot this year.
It changed a lot this year, and most notably the fact that we're doing it with fewer people, as you mentioned. So thinking about how those things feed into each other and who's becoming who, and I know that was sometimes just a logistical thing of like who can assume this character if they're this character, but there were also some kind of beautiful pairings, beautiful kind of doublings of characters as well. Anyway, so it felt very new just off the page. Then having the time, having like a pretty significant combination of new director, new Scrooge, new stage manager, in addition to some fresh voices to this piece altogether, there was just a lot infusing like possibility, and there was a lot of figuring out that the legacy brain can't solve because we've never been in this situation before. So there was a real freedom in that, I felt, of like letting go. And then there are also those and it was a gift to have a full rehearsal period in which to discover all of that. And so it felt very new and freeing in that way. It was a really, really warm space to create in, and warm people to create with, a lot of big hearts and generosity. So it was a pretty special experience. And it's, of course, coming back to this play, sort of going into monologue form here, but I don't mean to. I'll back off. But it's been a very special process in a lot of ways, and different in a lot of wonderful ways.
Um, I'll I'll say first off, Richard, hats off to you because I know you had a huge hand in re-evaluating, re-examining the novel and reinfusing our script with some parts of the story that hadn't been in for years. And there are a few things from the novel that have never been in our script. And I know that the audience might not know that at first glance. So this is great knowledge for the audience. We have a kick butt dramaturg here who really did such a good job reinfusing this script.
Thank you. I must say I did not work alone. Janet Allen and Ben Hanna and I worked together a lot 2 years ago to revise this, and then James Still, the director, and I worked together a ton this summer,
Yeah.
going through the script with a fine-tooth comb. So, it was a joyous process. I love this story so much.
And I'll also say, as somebody who's been in the show a fair amount of times, it is so lovely to go back to a full-length production because, and this is not to if you'll put up with it, shortchange the one-act version, but there were honestly times that we as a cast felt like we're doing like bobsled Christmas Carol, where
for those of you who are less familiar with the full-length history, I'll just say we did a 2-hour with intermission production of Christmas Carol for many years, and then for the last 10 or 15 years we've been doing a 90-minute no intermission version, and this year we're back to 2 hours with an intermission again. That's what Rob is talking about. Go.
And there was something about that like, my experience, you never really felt like you sat in a scene. It was like, here's a flavor of this scene, here's a flavor of this scene, we got to keep it moving. And boy, you really can sit in the scenes this time, and it's lovely. And my rookie season as Scrooge, it makes my job so much easier because it's a lot easier to follow the arc of the play now.
Let's touch on that for a minute, Rob. You've played just about every male part in previous years except Scrooge, and now this year you're playing Scrooge. So instead of playing a lot of smaller parts, you're playing one big part. That's got to be a different kind of experience of the show.
Yeah. My job, I was lucky to play Cratchit for a bunch of years. And, the people that have done it for years have always talked about, a potential challenge of Christmas Carol is you might be an actor that's not playing a lot of roles that have an arc to them. They are put in the show to impact Scrooge. But Cratchit was one that most definitely has an arc, Mrs. Cratchit and Bob. But really, those folks and Scrooge, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's about the folks with an arc. So
maybe a little bit Fred and Felicity.
Yes, that's right. I better, yeah, right, Nina?
I would say so.
Arc.
Yeah.
And that's my bad because Fred is that's one of the few folks that I haven't played. I never played.
Interesting. That's right.
I auditioned for Fred my first year that I auditioned for Christmas Carol. And about 20 seconds into the audition, I knew I'm not going to be in this production. That's another story. But anyway, it's lovely, Richard, to take this journey and to have this arc, because the other 7 people on stage are taking such good care of me that the really nice thing, and I mean this, all I have to do is listen. All I have to do is listen, and they take me where I need to go, and it's really beautiful. So
that's lovely. Now you set me up for like 3 different questions I want to ask simultaneously. Let's go to Nina first. Nina, this is your first year in A Christmas Carol.
Yes, it
So your
is.
first year leaping into a show that's been running for 30 years.
Mhm.
Did it feel like you had a lot of catching up to do, or was kind of everything so new that it was just like another big, huge, complicated show for you?
I think it's a little bit of both. I always feel like I am catching up, and I am wonderfully privileged to be able to be surrounded by such an incredible cast and team who are like always pushing me to think deeper into the story and to dig into the nuances that I haven't found yet. So it's really lovely to constantly be challenged in that way. And I think something that has been good fortune to me is the fact that this adaptation is so new this year that I am jumping into it. Um, it can be very intimidating to take on a story that is so well loved and so timeless and has been done in a typical way for so many years. To jump into that and have to think about the ways that other people have done it and whether I'm living up to that, whether it's okay for me to diverge from those choices. A lot of those challenges were kind of eliminated for me because this adaptation is so new in so many ways. So it's not really possible for me to play these characters in the same ways that the people before me have. And so I'm kind of freed of that pressure. And I think what was super, super special about this process is James did such a lovely job creating a very collaborative space, partially because that is just the type of director he is, and partially because of the way this adaptation is so new to this company. So we had a constant collaboration and a constant dialogue the entire time we were working through the show. And so I felt like I was always able to have some role in the conversation and also grasp little tidbits of wisdom that everybody could impart on me while I have been learning the show and finding out where I fit into it. And that has just been such a fun adventure.
That's lovely to hear. Rob, you mentioned how you felt supported by your 7 castmates. And I have to say, the first time I saw a run through of the show, I was really struck how I felt like the group of storytellers who've always been there to sort of tell this story about Scrooge in the past. This year, it really feels like you're going along with him on the journey. That it's almost like you're being his support group, whether he wants it or not.
Right.
It's a really lovely, warm feeling, and I just wonder if that's something you all consciously worked on, or if it's just something that happened, or
Um, I James was always cognizant of in every moment of the play. He was like, I want to track what's going on with Scrooge. And I think James, he said to me, a trap of this show is that Scrooge can kind of disappear. You get so involved in the scenes that he's watching that you're not watching him watch. And I think that was really smart of James to go like, he would come up to me in really every point of the show. What's going on with Scrooge here? What's happening here? What's happening here? So he was taking care of the stories that Scrooge was watching, but he was taking care of the fact that we have to mark Scrooge watching each moment. I also, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but what Nina said reminded me, I want to share this with people. The first day of rehearsal in the room, we had a couple of Zoom days where we, went over the script, and you were a part of that, Richard. But do you guys remember the first day in the rehearsal room? James opened by saying, I'm feeling very vulnerable right now. I haven't been in a rehearsal room in so long since the pandemic. And there was a period, maybe it was only 5 minutes, but I swear the room was like, how the hell do we start? How do we remember how to rehearse? And how are we going to tell this story? And it was kind of terrifying. That's a big word. It was daunting. And then we were going to sing In the Bleak Midwinter. And guys, I can't remember how Christmas is Coming started, but all of us, somebody started singing it. I don't know if it was Quentin, our Tiny Tim, but that got introduced, and that was the first moment James was like, "Yup, yes, that is a much better way to start our production." So we jettisoned something from the past and put in something that really mattered to us. And that was the coolest way to begin this. And I think it launched us, you know.
And I love how that song comes back at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Nothing against Here We Come a Wassailing, which we've sung for 30 years, but the beginning and ending of the show with Christmas is Coming is just, it's a delightful little parentheses.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, totally. How about Jen and Nina? How about from your point of view as Scrooge's companions in his journey?
I mean, again, I would say that one of the shifts being there are fewer of us. I think that kind of compression just sort of ups the urgency, and I mean, it just changes things because we are all so present at most every moment of the story that we were, as James was checking in with Rob to like, where is Scrooge, it's like, okay, where are we? Or like any individual, I mean, he either James asking that of us, like, who are we in this moment, or any of us individually going, okay, I don't know who I am or where my focus is. And sometimes it was sort of a technical thing and a sharing and like, what are the rules? We were constantly coming back to that. And there were times that, it could seem like we're spending a lot of time to get to this ultimately what could seem like a note in the program, but it's not. For us, I feel like we were able to really weave something that made sense to us and that was all about supporting Scrooge and recognizing that all we can do is support him and we cannot take the journey for him. We cannot make the decisions for him to change, but we can attempt to hold up a light or a mirror or anything so that he might have the opportunity to. And I think that was one of the strongest sort of inspirations coming out of this pandemic, or which, we're not, of course, fully out of this scare. We're doing things differently, but the notion of isolation versus community, and there's a new type of understanding that we can each understand about isolation after this time, after going through 2020. And so it seems so natural for the community to be this, please join us, like we are here. And so that was really beautiful.
There's a moment when Scrooge arrives at his apartment where we have a bunch of text we've never used before talking about Scrooge is going through and sort of checking out things. And then he sits in front of his fireplace and he sees Marley's face there. And you're all sort of clustered around him at that moment. And I thought, oh, they're not just watching him go through this. They're protecting him from whatever, scary stuff is coming up for him. It's really, really lovely.
Yeah, something that I would also love to add super quick is I think the thing, going back to what Rob said earlier about how so few of these characters have arcs in this story, the characters of ours that really do have the biggest arcs in this story, I feel, are our storyteller forms. Like, we are so tied into Scrooge's journey, and that's our journey as well. And I think this rehearsal process really, we spent so much time solidifying that sense of arc. So it kind of gave us something to latch onto and hold on to that ties us back into the themes of the play, which I think goes back to what Jen was saying. We all were constantly checking in with this greater sense of community because that does have like personal drive in who our storyteller selves actually are as characters.
It's a great point.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really lovely aspect. Jen, earlier on, you mentioned the fact that we have a new stage manager this year. Nathan Garrison, who's the IRT's production stage manager, has stage managed the show, I don't know, 15, 20 years. It feels like forever. I can't remember.
Like
I'm
24
sure
or something. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure somebody else did once, but I honestly don't remember them. Anyway, Nathan decided he needed a break from Christmas Carol this year. And so Erin Robeson Smith is stage managing the show. She's done a ton of shows at the RT, but she's never done a Christmas Carol before. So I wanted to ask you folks, what is your relationship to the stage manager? For those who don't know what a stage manager is, they sort of run the rehearsal process. They schedule everything. They make sure everything is organized for a show like Christmas Carol that is so huge. That is an incredibly complex process. And then they keep track of all the blocking so that from day to day we can go, what did we do yesterday? Oh yeah, I remember now. And then once the show they guide us through tech, putting all the actors together with all the scenery and costumes and lighting cues and everything. And then when the show runs, they call all the cues. So they make sure everything happens in a timely fashion. It's a huge job. But the question I wanted to ask you folks is, what is an actor's relationship to a stage manager? How does a stage manager have an effect on you as you're putting together your performance?
I'll jump in since hand on buzzers. I got first. A great stage manager is a fabulous human being. And luckily with both Aaron and Nathan, we have that. And I mean that because they have to juggle, as Richard just said, so many things. Technically, they have a huge responsibility, but they have to communicate between the director and the actors, the designers and the actors.
The administrative staff and everybody else.
Yeah, so they have to make sure the lines of communication are open, and they also they're communicating with actors when we are chipper, and they're communicating with us when we are absolutely exhausted. Like this production, there were a lot of new things for us, new production, new director. Erin was figuring it out for herself. There were several times, this is transparency, where we as a cast thought, oh, you know what, tomorrow's a 6-hour day. And then at the end of the day, Erin would go, guys, no, tomorrow's an 8-hour day or a 9-hour day or whatever. And we're tired. So we're like, oh man, but she is such a good communicator and such a good heart. And she recognizes, look, we're all tired. We're all, but she and James and all of us always had the thought, we are creating something really special. So it's going to be worth being this tired now to push through and make this great production. But unfortunately, when we were tired and maybe not at our best, Erin had to be the harbinger of like, you guys are going to bust your butt tomorrow. Yeah.
It's always nice if you're kind of voicing concern about a moment, or if there's something that you want to kind of check for yourself. I mean, she's the person who says, I'll keep an eye on that and let you know my thought. She's it's a really important relationship because essentially, I mean, she's who we go to. She is the keeper of the integrity of what we built. And so, that kind of mutual respect is imperative, and it flows easily because it's just a great group. And it's lovely too that while Erin was new to the project, our assistant stage manager Becky Rober has had some experience with it. So that was also kind of a nice dynamic. Again, that support if needed from traditionally, if this is helpful, but also the ability to reinvent. And maybe Becky was able to help sort of troubleshoot some things backstage, that would have taken longer to learn. But it's a really incredible team. We're really fortunate.
We're so fortunate we have the best stage managers at the IRT.
For real.
They make all of our lives, everyone from the front office to the scene shop in the back and everybody in between, they make our lives easier. Talk about the process of both being a storyteller and being a character and switching back and forth constantly. What's the challenge of that? What's the joy of that? What does that do? And Rob, you can talk about that too, because you've done that in the past.
No, it's Nina's turn.
Okay, I'll jump in on this. I find it so exciting to get to play more than one character in a process because there's so much to explore in what differentiates them and what unifies them. And I think Jen had brought this up earlier. Part of the way the different character tracks are split up is partially out of convenience, but there are also some really neat story discoveries and parallels to be found in that. So while we're also doing the work of saying, okay, what are the physical differences between these characters and the way that they carry themselves and move, and what are the differences in their backstories and their mindsets and their values, while we're parsing through that, there's also a really interesting discovery to be made about the ways these characters kind of parallel each other or intersect with each other in telling this overarching story. Something that I find so interesting about the character set that I get to play is getting to play both Belle and Felicity, because Belle is kind of this representation of one way that Scrooge's life could have gone, a type of relationship that he could have had, one that was based on love, which was not common at the time. And then to get to play Felicity in the present and get to be representative again of like that relationship that is based on love that he could have had, and for him to get to see that in his family as well as in his past, and to kind of be both of those people and to assume the similarities that exist in both of those characters in that way is something that I find really exciting. There's definitely the challenge of moving in and out of these different characters and the fact that we're on stage pretty much constantly through this show, but I think that can be part of what makes it exciting.
And then you also play Fan, Scrooge's sister. Right. The only person you play his sister and you play his fiance. So the only two people he ever really loved. One he lost, and one he lost.
He let go of.
Mm-hmm. He let go of. Yeah, he let her go away. So that's a wonderful little sort of triangle of women that you get to play around his life. I hadn't thought of it that way before. That's lovely. Let's have one last question. Okay, so you're in Christmas Carol. You tell this iconic story every day for a month. Does being in the show make you, is that like, okay, that's enough Christmas, and you sort of step away a little bit from Christmas, or does it just throw you into the Christmas frenzy even more?
I will say that I actually don't celebrate Christmas. Obviously, I grew up with A Christmas Carol because it's such a well-known and well-loved story. And it is really fun to get to have some relationship that to this holiday and to this tradition that's a little bit greater than what I've had in previous years because of doing this show. That is something that I really enjoy.
You know, I've always felt that being able to do this, it's so rare as you kind of wind to the end of a run of a show that you're actually leading to the pinnacle moment that the story takes place. So I always find it invigorating to do A Christmas Carol, because that time that you're on Christmas Eve and telling the story, and this is the moment that it takes place. I mean, to me, even if I might go through some ups and downs of Christmas fatigue along the way, I am always invigorated at the end to share the story on that day, and grateful for a day off the next day.
I think you and I have talked about this before, Richard, but Christmas Carol has always been, like in so many families, that's been a huge part of my holiday celebration since I've been a little kid, and it's a wonderful life. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to do both of those things. It's so cool. But you know, I live 700 miles away from here. Well, my family lives 700 miles away from here. And when I think back, 1998 was the first time I did Christmas Carol, and I hadn't fully decided that I'm going to commit to living in Indianapolis. And over the run of that Christmas Carol, I fell in love with the city, and I fell in love with the idea of celebrating this holiday with a city. That's what it felt like. And I talked about it with my family, and by the end of that run, I was like, I'm going to stay here. So it always, like Jen said, there are definitely moments of fatigue, but you know, people who aren't in Christmas Carol get holiday fatigue too, you know.
That's right.
Um, but it's such a beautiful thing. It's such a great thing to toil in, telling this story. And it's very gratifying. Um, so we're celebrating for a month. And I know there's good reason Jen and I are a good couple, because we ramp up in the same way, celebrating this. And there is nothing better. Two things. Nothing better than being able to be on that stage when you say, of all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve. Who says that this year?
I do.
Oh, Nina. All right.
I say it with Dave and Maria.
You win the prize.
That's great.
But we hear it and it's like, oh my God, we're telling it on the day. And then the greatest thing is Jen and I go out with her folks for the best dinner of the year after that show. It's just, it's great. Yeah.
Traditions. They're lovely.
Yeah.
I feel like we can't finish today without a brief, sad moment. Our dear friend Robert Neal, we lost him very recently, just a few days ago, really.
Yeah.
And Robert was in Christmas Carol so many times, played so many roles. I know that you and both of you were dear friends of his, and we miss him terribly, especially during this show, I think.
Yeah.
So blessings to his family and all the many people
Yeah.
in the audience who've loved seeing him on stage.
And he is there with us. He is there with us in this building where I currently am. And he is.
And he lives through the way the people in this show are keeping him alive with this story. That is something I've been very fortunate to observe in everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Nina. Yep. He is with us, and oh boy, there's probably not an hour that goes by that he does not get mentioned, you know, so it's lovely. He's right here with us. Yep.
Thank the three of you so much for joining us today for this post-show discussion. Everybody, it's a post-show, so theoretically you've seen the show already. But if you haven't, you don't want to miss it. It's Christmas Carol is always great, but I think this year it's truly something extraordinary. Thank you all very much, and have a Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.